Max Verstappen is renowned for his daring and fearless approach, but sometimes the Dutch sensation tends to take things to the extreme. From aggressive maneuvers resulting in collisions to controversial interactions with fellow drivers, these are 5.5 times Max Verstappen went too far. 2015 Monaco Grand Prix. Verstappen came into Formula One as a hugely talented teenager who was ready to take on the challenge of competing in one of the world's biggest racing competitions. Brimming with confidence, young Max was exciting to watch, but as we would come to find out at the 2015 Monaco Grand Prix, it was also very erratic. Starting from a respectable 9th position, Verstappen faced setbacks and slipped to 13th early in the race. Yet, as the laps unfolded, he climbed through the ranks, and by lap 64, he had clawed his way to 11th and was looking to climb to 10th. But he was repelled by Romain Grosjean. Unwilling to accept defeat, Verstappen tried to force his way through again, but unfortunately, his gamble misfired, resulting in a collision with Grosjean. It was a scary scene that sparked fear throughout the track as spectators feared the worst. Thankfully, the Dutchman emerged from the debris unscathed. Surprisingly, Verstappen refused to admit any wrongdoing, but once the footage was reviewed, the stewards decided he was guilty, and consequently, they slammed him with a 5-place grid penalty. 2016 Belgian Grand Prix. Now, less than a year after his infamous crash at the Circuit de Monaco, Max Verstappen was at the centre of controversy again, this time for his role in a high-speed crash at the 2016 Belgian Grand Prix. The young Dutchman was feeling himself after lining his car in P2. However, his race was thrown into jeopardy as early as the first corner after he collided with the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen around the La Source chicane. Sebastian Vettel was also affected in the melee, but fortunately, all 3 drivers completed the race, with Verstappen taking the checkered flag in P7. As expected, the Red Bull driver came under severe criticism after the race, especially from Kimi Raikkonen, who was the direct victim of the crash. The Finnish driver labelled Verstappen's driving as ridiculous. Adding his voice to the discussion, Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff described the Dutchman as refreshing and dangerous. In response to the backlash, Verstappen said he was just defending his position, and the stewards appeared to agree because after thorough investigations, they concluded that the Dutch sensation wasn't responsible for the crash. However, when asked about the incident, Christian Horner admitted that Verstappen's driving was on the edge. Critically, the Red Bull team boss didn't say in clear terms that Max was responsible for the collision, but his comments suggest that the Dutchman might have gone too far on that occasion. 2017 Singapore Grand Prix. After lining his car in P2 in qualifying, Max Verstappen would have been hoping to finish in the front row at the 2017 Singapore Grand Prix. However, the Dutch driver found himself eliminated from the race in the first lap, and to make things worse, he took Kimi Raikkonen and Sebastian Vettel along with him. The Dutchman found himself sandwiched between Vettel and Raikkonen, and with very little space to wiggle around, he made contact with Raikkonen, causing a chain reaction that affected Sebastian Vettel as well. Verstappen and Raikkonen crashed out immediately, while Vettel retired on the second lap. Looking back at the footage, it would be unfair to single out Verstappen as the scapegoat because even though he made the first contact, there was very little he could have done to avoid the collision. Moreover, the stewards ruled that no driver was predominantly at fault. But considering it was still early days in the race, Verstappen should have shown more restraint. Had he done that, he would have given himself a chance to finish the race and perhaps take the checkered flag in P1. Now, if you enjoyed watching this video this far, please hit the like button on your screen. Now back to the video. 2018 Brazil Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton had already claimed the F1 title before the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix, but as always, Max Verstappen was still fascinated by the idea of getting points on the board. Despite starting the contest in P5, the Dutch sensation worked his way up to P1 by lap 20, and it looked as though he was going to maintain that position until the end of the race. However, a controversial encounter with Esteban Ocon on lap 40 changed everything. The Force India driver was 1 lap down when he emerged from the pit lane to find race leader Verstappen in his sights, and after consultations with his team, he decided to unlap himself by overtaking Verstappen. However, as he was trying to sneak past, he touched the inside of Verstappen's car at turn 2. The impact of this incident meant Verstappen lost P1 to Lewis Hamilton, who eventually won the race. Angered by the crash, Verstappen labelled Ocon an idiot, and Red Bull team boss Christian Horner added his voice saying the actions of the Force India driver were irresponsible. The stewards seemingly agreed with these views and approved a 10-second stop-go penalty for Ocon. But apparently, Verstappen wasn't satisfied. The Red Bull driver got into a fierce altercation with Ocon, shoving and hitting the Force India driver several times on the chest. Consequently, the stewards ruled that Verstappen would perform 2 days of public service for his troubles. 2021 Italian Grand Prix. With their 2021 title challenge heating up, the rivalry between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton reached dangerous levels at the Italian Grand Prix. Going into the race, Verstappen had a 5-point advantage over Hamilton in the driver's standings, and after clinching pole in qualifying, it looked like he might extend that gap. However, a slow pit stop midway through the race dropped Verstappen down the pecking order. The time loss of the Red Bull racer was so significant that by the time Hamilton made his own pit stop and returned to the track, he was a fraction ahead of Verstappen. With both drivers unwilling to back down, they continued to race side by side until they collided at turn 1. The impact of the crash threw Verstappen's car into the air, after which it landed on the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton. This ultimately knocked both racers out of the race, but had it not been for the Halo safety device, the outcome of that crash would have been much worse. For context, the right rear tyre on Verstappen's car could have landed on Hamilton, and most likely that would have resulted in a life-threatening injury. Or in the worst case scenario, the Mercedes driver could have been killed by the impact. Reacting to the incident, Hamilton said, "I feel very fortunate today. Thank God for the halo, which saved me and saved my neck. I don't think I've ever been hit on the head by a car before, and it is quite a big shock for me." The 7-time world champion was also surprised that Verstappen didn't bother to check on him immediately after the crash. In fact, rather than show sympathy for Hamilton, Verstappen appeared to blame the Mercedes driver for the crash, saying, "That's what you get when you don't give enough space." This clearly isn't a behaviour you'd expect from a driver of Verstappen's stature. We know it's a very competitive sport and drivers sometimes have to be aggressive, but that's not an excuse to be reckless on the track. Verstappen unsurprisingly got a 3-grid penalty for his role in the crash. However, some people argue that the punishment should have been more severe considering the nature of his offence. Anyway, the stewards thought the 3-place grid penalty was appropriate, and it seems like they were right because since that incident, Verstappen hasn't been involved in any collision. Well, except for the time he slammed into the wall during the qualifying at the 2021 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. The Red Bull racer started the session in fine form and was on track to clinch pole position. However, he locked his front brake in the last corner before sliding into the barrier with significant force and speed. Unfortunately, this incident dropped Verstappen down to P3 in qualifying, which became P2 after the race. It wouldn't matter much though, because the Dutchman made up for the error by winning the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix to clinch the first title of his career.